Hey guys, Matthew. In this video, I'm going to be teaching you guys how you can basically transfer fracture and modifiers from one item to another. And this is very, very profitable, especially because sometimes there's a very massive discrepancy between a fractured modifier on a certain base versus another. Of course, these are things that you're going to have to figure out by yourself, but there's a lot of currency to be made. Now, in this video, I'm going to be teaching you that, but we're also going to be going a step further, and I'll teach you guys how to basically put two fractured modifiers together, a suffix and a prefix, from two different items in order to end up with double fractured modifiers on a single base. Now, this is especially good if you don't really care about the base and you realistically only care about the fractured modifiers. And we're going to go a step further and also be telling you guys how you can go about essentially trying to put two fractured modifiers on another item as well. So, of course, we're going to be referring to my good friend Iron vs. Wild's guide on Reddit on Recombinators. I'm going to be linking that in the description down below as always. And what's very important that we understand is the importance of mod distribution and essentially mod pool redistribution whenever you use a recombinator, because essentially prefixes are treated independently than suffixes, and this is very important for what I'm going to be explaining right here. So what we're going to start off with is essentially looking down at a single fracture, right? So if you wanted to take a single fracture and send it over to another base, what are your odds of doing so, and how do you maximize the odds of doing that? So the first thing we're going to look at is essentially how many mods are in the pool. So if we look at a breakdown of a single fracture, so let's just say, for example, I wanted to take this physical damage to attacks, and actually, let me get another base here. Let's just say I wanted to get this fire resistance, right? Of course, this example is going to be whatever, but let's just say I really wanted to get this fire resistance over to this ring mail pair of gloves. That was my goal, right? So how would I go about this to maximize my odds? So the first thing is that essentially you go ahead and you just do it on a white pair of gloves, right, with nothing on them, or at least no other prefixes and no other prefixes, or suffix, sorry, no other suffixes and no other suffixes on that. So there's essentially just a single modifier in the pool that would give you a 66% chance to actually keep the fractured modifier. Now, note that whenever you do this, there's a 50% chance that it keeps either of the bases, which means there's always, at the baseline, a 50% chance that you fail if you care about the base. But let's just say that you didn't care about the base, then there would be a 66% chance to actually succeed. Now, the other option is that you essentially go with two modifiers. So that would be essentially that you craft a suffix, like anything, on this ringmail pair of gloves. Or let's say you were to craft another suffix on the Goliath glove and then keep the ringmail gloves with no suffixes. So you'd have a total of two mods in the pool. That would give you a 66% chance to actually succeed, so long as the suffix is not the same one. Right? If you were to actually craft cold or fire resistance, which would be the same as this one, that would actually be quite bad, because when it does decide to keep the two modifiers, right, the 33%, which is your base chance to win, well, since it can't keep both, it'll have to 50-50 between which ones it's going to keep. So you want to make sure that if you're trying to basically take a single fracture from one item to another, that you don't have the same modifier available on the other receiving piece, if you will. Another option, and this is going to be the best one, is three modifiers. Now, why three modifiers is very simple. There's three mods in the pool. You have a 20% chance to get all three. That's an automatic success. Now, there's also a 50% chance that it chooses two modifiers, and this is what we can take advantage of using duplicated modifiers on an item. So let's just say that I have this fire modifier, right, that I actually really care about, and then I want to try to put onto this ringmail gloves. The best way for me to do that would be to have a single suffix on both cases, other than the fractured fire resistance, so let's say like cold resistance or something like that, on both those items. And the reason for that is because if it picks those two modifiers, since it can't pick the cold resistance twice, right, you can't have a pair of gloves with twice the cold resistance, it would default back to picking another modifier, which in my case would have to be my fractured modifier, which means I would end up with the 20% chance to succeed plus the automatic 50% chance to succeed, and then there's also a chance that it picks the modifier that I do care for. So 1 in 3 chance of that happening, so another 10% for a total of 80% chance that it would actually succeed. So let's just see if we can high roll or low roll realistically this actual 80% here, because it's not bad odds. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and grab another suffix on this item. So in this case, I got strength. So all I need to do is essentially craft strength on this, right? That's it. Now I've got three modifiers in the pool, but the strength is doubled, which means if it picks two 2 rolls, which is a 50% chance, it automatically is going to give me my fire resistance, and if it only decides to pick one singular modifier, it could still pick the fire resistance once out of 3 times. So if I do this, let's just see if we actually get it. Well, there you have it. You know, we rolled that 80% chance, and we also basically got it on the right base, the one that we actually cared for, on our ringmail gloves. So this is essentially how you go about, you know, taking fractured modifiers from one item to another. Now you can actually do this with fractured prefixes and fractured suffixes at the same time, because prefixes and suffixes are treated independently in the process. You could actually do the exact same thing if you wanted to do a fractured prefix and a fractured suffix, basically simultaneously. So we know that in order to get this fire resistance here, to get or to increase our odds, essentially, we want to have the same suffix on both pairs of gloves. So in this case, I've got strength on my pair of gloves, right? So I would craft strength, and that would give me an 80% chance to keep the fire resistance. But we also, in our case here, want to also fracture the physical damage to attacks. So that means that we also need a crafted prefix. Now, we can multi-mod both pair of gloves, and then that means that the suffix, which is the same, right, would be the multi-mod. It would be available on both cases, and then we could simply craft a random prefix, but that would be a lot of currency invested for such, you know, a garbage item, so we're not going to do that. Instead, we're probably just going to go ahead and use like a couple essences or something like that, and go from there. Or if I can actually get some modifiers that I can simply craft, that would be good too. So in this case, we got the strength, so I could craft strength on this, and then I could actually craft mana on this. So this is perfect, right? So I'm going to explain that once again to make sure that you guys understand. But let's go ahead and do that, and I'll craft mana. And in this case, I'll have an 80% chance of keeping both my fractured prefix and my fractured suffix, which is pretty decent. So in this case, I have my fractured suffix, which is fire resistance, right? And then I've got the crafted strength, and then I got to match this crafted strength with no other suffix on my other item. So in this case, I have the actual crafted strength and no other suffix. And then I've got my physical damage to attacks, which I'm trying to also keep. So I'm going to have to match a prefix in order to get to this magic number of 80%. So I'm going to have the crafted mana because I have mana on these. And if I do this, I have an 80% chance to end up with both fractured suffixes individually, right? So there's an 80% chance that I keep the fractured prefix, and then 80% chance that I keep the fractured suffix. So in this case, I rolled high for the I rolled 80% for the fractured prefix, but I lost my actual fractured suffix. So let's just see if we could do it one more time, because 80% and 80% are definitely not bad odds, so it really shouldn't be that hard to do. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit these with a scour, and then regal, and as long as there are 2 modifiers which I can craft, 1 suffix, 1 prefix, we're going to be happy. So in this case, the suffix is the dex. In this case, it's physical to attack, so we really need to get a suffix on this that we'll be able to craft on both. So as soon as we regal a suffix, we'll be good to go. All right, so we got rarity. Now, unfortunately, rarity is not something we can craft, so I should have said a crafted suffix. So in this case, we got intelligence, which means we can craft on intelligence on this pair of gloves, right? Now we have intelligence on this pair of gloves, and on this pair of glove, we have the physical damage to attacks alongside... Oh, actually, that's pretty bad. It's the same modifier, which I didn't realize. So that's not going to work on the actual physical damage to attacks here. So I'm going to go ahead and redo that. Hopefully we get another prefix. Okay, physical damage to attacks again. Cold damage to attacks. All right, cold damage to attacks would work. So we're going to go ahead and craft our dexterity on this in order to match the actual, not dexterity, intelligence. We're going to go ahead and craft our intelligence on this in order to match it alongside the intelligence over here. And then this one is physical, this one is cold. So we're going to go ahead and match the cold. Now, by doing so, we are once again giving ourselves about an 80% chance for the prefix to keep and 80% chance for the suffix to keep, and they're treated individually, so that's pretty good odds. Now, of course, you could do this with very, very expensive items, and your odds are pretty decent. So it looks like unfortunately, I low rolled on that suffix again, but that's okay. We're just going to simply move on because we want to go a step further, and I believe I've already... No, actually, I do need to prepare one more pair, so let's just do that one more time. And then we are going to hopefully hit it, and then we'll be able to move on. Okay, so we got the fire resistance, which is good. Let's see if we could roll something like life or some other random prefix, and then we'll be able to keep going with our craft, because I want to show you guys how to go about maximizing double in order to get, say, 4 fracture modifier on a single item. So I've got the fire resistance here, so I'm going to go ahead and craft fire resistance on this. And in this case, I've got life, so I'm going to go ahead and simply craft life on those. And once again, I should have about an 80% chance of keeping both. So hopefully we actually high rolled 80% in both cases. So it looks like we did not. Again, we lost a prefix this time. Oh my god. So these 80% sometimes are definitely not guaranteed. But I really want to go a step further and show you guys how you make the 4 fractured modifiers. So I really have to do this. So I apologize for the time constraint. We're going to try to speed through this right now. You can obviously go ahead and skip a little bit later on in the video. But I'm going to need a fractured prefix in this case. So let's see if I have another one. I don't know if you can actually craft Fizz Leech's life. So let's see if I have another fractured prefix. No, it looks like that's all I have in my one chaos pair of gloves. So let's just see if I can craft on Leech. If I can, it's fine. Okay, so I can craft on physical damage Leech's life, in which case that's perfectly good. So what I'll do is I will go ahead and scour that. We've got our fire damage to attacks, which we'll be able to craft on this as well, which is going to take care of our prefixes. Now we need a suffix that we'll be able to essentially pair with the cold resistance. So we've got fire resistance. So I really hope that this goes through because I'm running out of actual pairs of gloves to show this. And then we're going to go ahead and craft on. So this is Fizz. So it's fire damage to attacks. So we're just going to craft on fire damage to attacks. If I can. Oh, so it looks like you can't craft fire damage to attacks on gloves. Oh, that's annoying. I definitely thought you could do that. All right. Well, that's not good. We're going to have to prep another prefix instead of fire damage to attacks. So hopefully like life or something, intelligence. We're running out of scours. We're running out of everything. I don't think you can craft anything like that. Rarity is not good. Okay, time to go buy some scours. Talk about preparation. All right, that's okay. No, that's kind of the joys of crafting. Sometimes things just don't go your way. And you just kind of got to learn to deal with it because that's just the life of crafting. All right, so let's go ahead and see if we can wriggle a prefix. Surely we can wriggle a prefix, right? Not just suffixes. Okay, that's another suffix. I keep hitting okay, that's another suffix. Okay, please, seriously. Okay, that's another suffix. All right, surely I wriggle a prefix, right? Okay, that's another suffix. All right, maybe one more time. That's another suffix. Wow, these are just doomed. Just absolutely okay, well, that's like 8 suffixes in a row. That's, you know, if I was trying to do that, like, really hard, I would not be able to, like, ever. So hopefully the next is going to be a prefix so that we can actually go for it. Okay, there we go. We got life. So prefixes actually do exist. So we're going to go ahead and craft on life. Now, I really hope that this goes through. Otherwise, I might have to just re-record this with the bases already ready to go because this is getting pretty long. All right. So let's go ahead and send this. About 80% chance that we keep our fractured prefix and an 80% chance that we keep our fractured suffix. Let's see if we rolled both. We did. So there we are. 80% chance that we rolled, and we rolled on both cases. So now we actually have a prefix fractured and a suffix fractured. Now the question is, what if you wanted to have 2 fractured prefixes or 2 fractured suffixes? So we're going to refer to our little mod pool again. And we have to remember that prefixes and suffixes are treated independently, right? So essentially what we're going to look at is the breakdown for 2 fractures because I already did the math on it. So essentially if you have 2 modifiers, there's a 33% chance to win. If you have 3 modifiers, there's a 35% chance to win. If you have 4 modifiers, there's a 46% chance to win. If you have 5 modifiers, there's a 36.25% chance to win. And I didn't do the math on the 6 mod because it was annoying and I knew that it was going to be worse anyways. So looking at this, our magic number is 4 modifiers. So the cool thing now is that we can actually attempt to make a 4 fractured modifier in one fell swoop, in one go, if we were to just high roll 2 50-50s in a row. Or not quite 50-50s, but close enough. Now the idea is that we need to get 4 modifiers with 1 modifier which is the same. So remember when I was saying that if I wanted to transfer like the physical damage leech as life, I wanted to have basically a crafted prefix on my gloves that would match the crafted prefix on the other gloves, so that when I went ahead and recombinated it, it would give me an 80% chance to win. Well, this is the same idea, but essentially because we have 2 fractured modifiers, right? We are going to want to basically have 1 crafted modifier, which is the same on both. It's going to be the exact same thing. The only difference is in this case, there's a little bit more RNG because there's 2 modifiers that are fractured that we actually want to move along. Now, looking at the breakdown, there's a 35% chance that we get 3 modifiers, which is an automatic win, and there's a 55% chance that we get 2 modifiers. So, in those basically 2 modifiers that can actually be chosen, because we have the same modifier crafted on both, that same modifier can't be chosen twice. So what can happen is it can choose the right 2 fractured modifier. It can choose a fractured and a non-fractured, and a fractured and a non-fractured. So essentially 1 out of 3 of those 55% chances, you'll end up with a 2 modifier, and that adds up to about 11%. When you add this up to the 35, you end up with a 46% chance to actually succeed. And because prefixes are treated independently than suffixes, we can actually do both at once. So now all we need to have essentially is the same suffix in both cases and the same prefix in both cases. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab some essences of anger, because we don't have fire resistance on either of those, right? Yeah, we have accuracy and then we have cold resistance. So we're going to go ahead and just basically force on fire resistance. Again, you can multi-mod if your bases were worth it, but we're not going to do that because there's no point. So we're just going to go ahead and wriggle those real quick. And we are going to force on that fire resistance, and we want no other suffixes at all. So we have, in this case, that's pretty good. We have the fire and nothing else. So let's go ahead and do the same thing here. We have fire and nothing else. Now, looking at what we have otherwise, because we can't just look at the fire, we have the fire in both cases, and then we have our fractured accuracy and our fractured cold resistance. This is perfect, right? But looking at our prefixes, we have physical damage to attacks, which is actually, let's see, it's actually not fractured. So we have lightning damage and physical leech. So we have the physical damage to attacks and the evasion. So this is actually kind of bad. And the reason why this is bad is because we want to have the same prefix in both cases. So the easiest way to do this would be to basically annul off the evasion. And if you kill off your fire resistance, you'll basically just go again. But I don't think I have, any annuls currently. Yeah, I don't have any annuls. So because I don't have any annuls, I'm probably just gonna spam some essences and hope that I get actually it's just never gonna work, is it? Physical damage to attacks. The only way that would ever work is essentially if I was to roll the same exact modifier in both cases, which is pretty unlikely. Oh, we actually rolled it, but unfortunately armor and evasion. Now armor and evasion I don't or actually I believe are the same mod pool, and we can actually test this because we have armor and evasion here. So essentially, if we can't craft on evasion %, right, and it says this item already has a mod of this type, essentially that means that it's the same mod pool. So even if armor and evasion, and in this case evasion, don't look the same, they're actually the same mod pool, which means whenever it pulls, it can't be chosen twice. So if we were to look at this gloves here, just to quickly recap and finally go with the last thing that I wanted to do for this video, and of course this very well might fail. We've got a 50% chance to go on the right base. Now in our case, we don't care about the base because they're both bad, both 1C gloves. But we've got our fractured suffix of accuracy paired with our fractured suffix of cold res, and then we have fire on both, which is our fodder modifier, which is basically the same. And then we have lightning damage to attacks and physical leech as life on both, which is okay. And then we have the evasion and the armor evasion, which is basically our fodder modifier, which is the same on both. So if I go ahead and recombinate that, there's a 46% chance that I keep both fractured prefixes paired with a 46% chance that I keep both fractured suffixes. So a 50-50 and a 50-50, which essentially means I have about 25% chance, so I'd have to do this 4 times to end up with a 4 fractured modifier. Now, there's a much higher chance that I end up with a 3 fractured modifier, and almost guaranteed that I actually end up with 2 fractured modifiers. It would be very, very unlikely that I actually lose all 3, but let's just go ahead and see what happens, and this is essentially how we're going to close out the video. So it'd be pretty cool if we could get a big win, but let's find out. So in our case, we actually did lose one of our fractured prefix, but we still ended up with a triple fractured item, and of course, that was, relatively easy. It only took a few minutes. Now, to be fair, these bases are extremely cheap, but the thing is, there are some bases in the game where you can do this multiple times, where the initial bases, if you will, are quite cheap, but if you hit it on the right stuff, the actual potential for profit is absolutely massive. So that'll be your job to actually go out and figure out what these bases may be, but essentially this is how you go about trying to make, triple and quadruple, and even technically you could go 5 on the amount of fractured modifiers, but then it gets incredibly heavy on RNG because you can no longer pair modifiers to increase your odds because the amount of modifiers that you actually want to keep is very high. Essentially, this system of recombinating is very strong when it comes to all the way up to about 4 modifiers. When we get into the 5 and 6 modifiers is when things get really crazy in terms of actually keeping the ones that you want to keep. But that is essentially everything I wanted to share with you guys in this video. Hopefully this was informative, and hopefully this gives you guys some ideas on what you can do with this, because not only can you take fractured modifiers and have an 80% chance of essentially keeping them whenever you recombinate them with another base, and as long as you win that 50-50, you can essentially move very expensive fractured modifiers onto very expensive bases for essentially free. As long as, you know, you win a couple 50-50s, but there is always going to be RNG when it comes to crafting, especially these super endgame things. Anyways, hopefully, again, that was informative. Before I go, I do want to say a massive thank you to my supporters. So JNN, Rocky, Max, Solmonk, Exo, Miss Rescoral, Thomas, Mass, Nake, The Great Master, Alex, Tim, Mercury, Bert, Kai, or K, Nailed, Jarvis, Joven, Bitizen, Vaith, Dalsmar, and Odrago99, as well as Sins Eater. Hopefully you guys appreciated this, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.